Burt Bogardus grew up in Pasadena, studied biology at UC Berkeley, and then spent 2 years in Ghana in the Peace Corps.
And when I came back to the United States, one day I happened to see a job announcement for a park ranger. I thought, oh, that sounds interesting.
After working at 2 other state parks, Burt arrived at Mount Diablo in 1975. He liked it so much he stayed for 18 years. After he retired, he immediately began working as a park volunteer. By the time we were making this guide in 2019, he had devoted a total of 44 years to Mount Diablo. As we walk along Donner Creek Road, I ask him about the historic fire of 1977.
The 77 fire was a lightning-caused fire, and I was on duty. I was on the closing shift. There was a lot of thunder in the air. I could hear thunderclaps. So I got in the truck and started up towards the summit. I see these flashes of lightning all around the mountain. And I thought, this doesn't look too good. And then I had a thought to myself, I wonder how intelligent it is to go up to the top of a high mountain in the middle of a lightning storm. But anyway, I went up there and the lightning, strangely enough, did not hit the summit. It hit an area around Twin Peaks. And of course we called it in right away, and the unfortunate thing about the response was that the firefighting aircraft couldn't fly at night. And so they were never able to knock it down at the very beginning. So it burned overnight and it took 4 days to put it out.
The fire burned up Back Canyon and Donner Canyon rapidly. They hadn't burned in 100 years. It burned around North Peak, burned up the waterfalls canyon, Wild Oak Canyon, and then started down Mitchell Canyon. But all in all, the fire consumed 6,000 acres here on Mount Diablo.
Right after the fire, people were devastated. They began to collect funds to try to reseed the mountain with non-native trees. The park nixed that idea, but decided to replant with natives instead.
I remember clearly that our eminent botanist, Mary Bowerman, was very much opposed when she found out that they were going to go out to nurseries and buy plants. I remember Mary Bowerman at one of the meetings said, well, I hope they all die. Her concern was that it may be the same species, but it would be introducing a different genetic makeup than what was already here.
Even so, the replanting effort proceeded, mostly around campground and picnic areas.
They planted a lot of bay trees, they planted a lot of grapevine, and then they had volunteers that went up and watered them regularly. I do not think that any of them survived. People began to realize that the idea of replanting the vegetation wasn't very well thought out, so they had money left over. And they had always dreamed of building a trail around the top of the mountain. Mary Bowerman was opposed to it because it went through a community of rare plants called bitterroot. And so they compromised and they rerouted the trail around the bitterroot. And years after her death, that trail is named after her.
That trail was first called the Fire Interpretive Trail. Later, it became the Mary Bowerman Trail, and it's one of the most popular on the mountain today. But it was tough to build.
Very soon they ran into solid rock, and so they contracted with a guy, and I think his name was Bell. He had a little bulldozer that was about 3 feet wide, and he was also an explosive expert. He'd go out and he'd set these charges, and you'd hear boom. I wrote in our park log, Mr. Bell is busy building the fire ecology trail with ecology dynamite and an ecology bulldozer.
In segment 5, we'll visit the Donner Cabin. It's marked by a sign about a mile from the entrance gate.